What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's video. I apologize for not uploading last week, and really it's an apology kind of to myself because I wanted to focus on posting a video every week, and I dropped the ball last week. I could make up an excuse and say, hey, it was life got in the way or this or that, but no, I dropped the ball and I didn't upload, so my bad. I'm gonna restart, and it reminds me of the quote from what was it? Batman Begins in 2008, saying, the idea of, why do we fall, right? So we learn to pick ourselves up. And I mean, it's stupid. I'm going to apply the same thing here and say, pick ourselves up, pick myself up, and get back on it and get back on that weekly posting schedule. So hopefully from here on out, we'll be doing every week or more. Listen, this week I wanted to just jump into something really quick and talk about an idea that's been rolling around in my head for a little while. And I think it's interesting to think about. And really, there's no way to answer it. So the idea is something called a simulation theory. And basically, it's the idea that the reality that we live in now is something that's completely and entirely simulated. It's not actually real. It's not what you would call base reality. It's a simulation. And I mean, this was heavily popularized, right? Years ago in the movie series, The Matrix, they talked about that a lot. But I think it's just an interesting thought experiment to kind of say, well, how do we know that the reality we have is actually real? Obviously, we have computers. We have ways of simulating reality. We have ways of looking at a life and saying, okay, is this actually real? Because there are ways of generating a reality that look almost real. And as computers only continue to improve and get better, simulation and virtual reality and augmented reality are going to be things in our daily life looking into the future saying this is going to be a much more commonplace thing. So it's interesting to me to think about, well, if that's the case, and we as a human society, as a human race, as a human species has been able to develop technology in the amount of time that we've existed to simulate the reality that we live in, and the computers and processors and machine learning algorithms and graphics processing are all going to get better at the rate that they have been getting better the last 100 years or so, or at a faster rate as things and processes improve. How do we know then that we're not a simulation of some other alien species compute processing power? And I know that's crazy to even think about. Of course you're in reality. Of course you're this is reality, and of course it seems just kind of something that we would assume. But you get into these really deep consciousness, deep questions, deep ideas of what is consciousness and what is reality itself. So this hypothesis actually has origins going way back to Greek and actually Eastern mythologies as well. Different ideas of, I think it was, let's see here, the butterfly dream, and the ancient Indian philosophy of Maya, or ancient Greek philosophy as well. So thought about this for a very long time, but really in our modern time, it's kind of popped up in 2003 with a philosopher, Nick Bostrom, proposed a trilemma in which he called the simulation argument. So like a dilemma, it's a trilemma. Basically just saying that what we've been talking about here, we are not in reality. We are a simulation of reality, and the chances of us being in base reality are very slim. That's actually a quote from Elon Musk a couple years ago in talking about the idea, saying the chances of us being in base reality are pretty slim. And I think it's just really interesting to think about. I don't know whether it has any concrete implications. What does it really mean? But I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that we are in base reality, or do you think this is simulated? Do you think that the ideas that we have, and there's a couple of things where I think there's some convenient answers. Like the one that I really like is the idea of the speed of light being the speed limit of the universe, right? Well, you think, well, why can't we go faster than the speed of light? And when you study the physics behind it, the quantum mechanics behind it, you really realize that the universe tends to make things fit into basically will bend even space and time itself to make sure that the speed of light is never violated. It never there's nothing that ever moves faster than it, and that's just the way it is. So the speed of light, or the speed of causality, really is, from a physics standpoint, is actually more accurate. But the universe, again, like I said, will bend itself backwards to say, look, this is the speed of causality and it never changes. And if you think about that from a simulation theory argument, the idea is that, well, if you look at the speed of light as sort of the speed of causality as the speed limit of the universe, well, if things are being simulated, if things are being rendered, for example, you could travel to a part of the universe that hasn't had time to render yet. So if you think of that as like a hard limit in a code, or in a game code, in other words, the process cycle has to have the time to sort of create or render the area that you're now observing. Well, if it takes a certain amount of time for that area to be rendered by an observer, or to be viewed by an observed, then you just write that hard limit in and say, oh, nope, can't go faster than the speed of light, because that's the speed at which everything is rendered, or the speed at which causality happens. So that's one really interesting kind of, oh yeah, that solves that argument. And then the idea of, the wave particle duality of light, the idea of, again, looking at some of the more spooky quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement, sort of the spooky motion at a distance, as Einstein, I believe, coined the term. It really kind of makes sense in a simulated environment rather than in based reality. So just an interesting topic, I think, to think about. Like I said, if you have any ideas, if you have any theories about it yourself, definitely chime in the comments. Tell me what you think. Again, I appreciate all y'all for watching, and I hope you're having an amazing week, and I hope to talk to you again in the next one. Peace.